Hi there, this is KD. I am so glad that you've decided to start tracking the moon by downloading this calendar. It's a very rewarding practice and can be a lot of fun. So in this video, I'm going to provide a little orientation to the calendar and suggest 3 ways that you can use it. So to start with, I like to update this calendar monthly, a couple of days before the end of the month. So look out for July's transits to be in there, starting maybe next weekend. I like to view this in the full month mode, but you could also view it in day mode or week mode or even year mode, although again, it won't be populated for the rest of the months. You see that each of these appointment blocks have the name of an astrological sign. And during that appointment block, the moon is moving through or transiting that sign. It's on a 24-hour clock, and there is precise start time and end time to when the moon will enter and leave. In order to know what it means, the moon transiting Gemini, I recommend doing a quick Google search or visiting a site like cafeastrology.com in order to get an overview of what that might mean. To go to that site real quick, this is cafeastrology.com / when the moon is in .html. So this is a pretty good page to get a feel for what it means when the moon is transiting each of the astrological signs. If you hover over the appointment or click on it, you'll see a few small notes in here. These are intended to give you a little bit more context for what each of the signs means. But I am constantly evolving my ideas of what I want to put into these appointment blocks, and it might become a little bit more detailed as time goes on. So keep a lookout. In addition to these appointment blocks, you'll also see a couple specific points on this calendar, and there will be at least 4, sometimes 5 of these points every month, and they are the new moon, first quarter moon, the full moon, and the last quarter moon. So now you'll know exactly when those are. As I mentioned, there are 3 ways you can use this calendar. The first level is for awareness of what phase the moon it is in. And so I'm going to introduce to you a little bit of a definition about what each phase of the moon means and what that might mean for you. So we have a new moon coming up soon, so let's start with that. The new moon is a time when the moon and the sun are in the same place at the same time. It's a really good time for setting intentions or initiating a reset. I have always really loved the analogy of a plant's life cycle for understanding the phases of the moon. So this would be equivalent to the time of planting seeds. The first quarter moon, and we have one of those coming up at the end of the month in Libra on the 28th. The first quarter moon is a time when the seedling is poking up through the soil. It's time for a hardening. So we might be confronting the first obstacles or challenges to our new moon intentions during this time. And we're often building structures or creating plans. The full moon is when the sun and the moon are in opposite signs, on opposite sides of the zodiacal wheel. This is analogous to the plant blossoming when it's on its way to bearing fruit. It's the decisive pinnacle of our efforts, or lack thereof, during the lunar cycle, and it's kind of like a big boss battle, whether positive or negative. There is a lot of energy in the air during full moons. And finally, the last quarter moon, which is kind of like the harvesting of the plant and it's going back to seed. During the time of the last quarter moon, we can integrate lessons from the full moon and reflect on whether the intentions that we set during the new moon were sound. There's an element of challenge, kind of like the first quarter moon, such as a decision to make or something to let go. So, knowing each of these 4 phases of the moon, you can mash up that definition with, for instance, the definition of a moon in Cancer and start formulating an idea of what the new moon in Cancer might mean. That's the first level of using this calendar. The second level is to know your personal sun sign, because from knowing your sun sign, you can actually extrapolate how the moon will be affecting you over the course of a month. So I'm going to take the example of somebody that has their sun in Leo. And if you would like to look up your birth chart to figure out where your sun is, I would recommend going to a site like astro.com. That's astro.com, or one of the many other services out there if you Google free birth chart. And it will return a chart for you unless you know where your sun is based on your birth date and time. So let's say you have your sun in Leo. Whenever the moon is transiting the sign of Leo, then you are going to be experiencing a new moon phase. So you think about the definitions I provided earlier of a new moon. And that means for you specifically, this is a time where it will be very powerful and very strong for you to be trying to set those intentions, plant new seeds, and initiate a reset. To find out when your first quarter moon is, you're going to count 3 signs over from your sun sign in this calendar, or if you have that wheel, 3 signs over in the wheel. So we're going to go 1 Virgo, 2 Libra, 3 Scorpio. So for a Leo sun sign, when the moon is transiting Scorpio, you're going to be at that first quarter moon phase of hardening, challenges, building structures. To carry on and find out when the full moon is, I'm going to jump up here to Scorpio at the beginning of the month so we can continue to count 3 signs again. 1 Sagittarius, 2 Capricorn, 3 Aquarius, and when the moon is in Aquarius, then Leo sun signs are going to be having their personal full moon. And finally, to calculate the last quarter moon, you're going to count 3 signs over from that. 1 Pisces, 2 Aries, 3 Taurus. Taurus is the last quarter moon for Leo. And you can do that for any of these signs. And again, knowing what those definitions were of the new first quarter full and last quarter moon, think about how that will affect you personally and how those will align with maybe your activities during the course of a month. So that's level 2 of knowing your sun sign and being able to use this moon calendar to track the moon and how it affects you. And the very last way that you can use this is when you know your birth chart very well, or you have a copy of your birth chart with you, to look to the houses where each sign is in your chart and the planets they're in. So again, using a free birth chart calculator, you can very easily get your own pulled up, but I have one on this web page. This is a great website called planetwatcher.com, and I just entered a random date up here. And so just to tell you a little bit about how to read a birth chart even briefly, the first house, there are 12 houses, starts here. And in this design, the astrological sign is represented by the glyph on the outside of this chart. So in this chart, the first sign is ruled by, or the first house is in the sign of Aries. Second house is in the sign of Taurus, then Gemini, Cancer, etc., and so on. So essentially what I'm saying is if you know that when the moon is in Aries, if this were your birth chart, the moon is transiting through your first house, you can learn something from that as well. Again, I recommend a site like Cafe Astrology or Googling moon in first house and seeing what that might mean for you. And if, for instance, there were any planets in this house, you could also learn what it means when the moon comes across those planets. So on a monthly basis, let's say this person, whenever the moon is going through Gemini and Cancer down here, that's going to be a busy moon. You know, they're going to have the moon meeting up with this planet, that's like 6 different points that might impact them throughout the month. But furthermore, again, like I said, each house has a specific definition. So the first house is the sense of self and the sense of health. And I would recommend Googling that to learn a little bit more about what each of those houses mean. One example that I really like to point out for everyone, if you end up being able to pull up your natal chart, is paying attention to when the moon is going through the sign that is your 12th house. In this chart, that would be Pisces. The 12th house is a house of, it can be a time where we need to pull inward, reflect. We might be a little bit lower energy and we might be dealing with some internal processing during that time. So I would not recommend necessarily planning a big party. I would not recommend, making a big speech during a time where the moon is transiting your 12th house. But you can learn that sort of thing, again, by having a calendar like this and knowing what sign the moon is traveling through and knowing where that is activating your own personal chart. So that's the third level of being able to use this moon tracking calendar. Again, I'm hoping to add more details and information into these appointment blocks over the coming months, so keep a lookout for that. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please, if you have any questions, let me know. You can reach out to me on Facebook, Instagram, or via email at kd@cursorycook.com. And I hope you enjoy. Thank you.